Test, test. Looks like we're live. Okay. All right. So we got through the internet difficulty, and here we are. So I don't know how, Sukalia, on this one, if people are able to find it, how they tell us. The chat. I heard something sound like a chat window. Same as in when we do it on Facebook? Mhm. If you're able to see us, I can't tell if you're able to see us because we can't get the chat box going. So just wait 1 minute while we try to work out how that works. Uh-huh. So it's working, right? Okay, but it should be able to see here if I'm going to be able to interact with them. Okay. All right. So Sukali is here and she's able to see your chats on her stream somehow, but not on mine. So I can't see you on mine. So let's just start. Okay. All right. This is part 3 of picking a teacher, advice for picking a teacher. The criteria, I think, are kind of crucial that you understand for picking a teacher. So it's a formal teaching, even though it's over the internet. So why don't we start with mantra? Okay. Like we did before. And I'm going to use the bell. So if, thank you. If you want to turn your volume down on your mic or something so you don't crack your speakers, feel free. Or your ears. Not going to ring loudly. Okay. Just an invocation, short invocation. Red channel with Ganesha, white channel with Saraswati, middle channel with Gurus. 3 ohms, unified body, speech, and mind. Open ourselves to receiving the teaching. Now imagine all your mental, emotional, physical obstacles, spiritual obstacles within yourself, and environmental obstacles being banished, just dissipated or resolved. Om Ganganapade Namaha, Om Ganganapade Namaha, Om Ganganapade Namaha. Aum Shring Hring Glang Gling Glang Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Aing Saraswatya Namaha. Om Aing Saraswatya Namaha. Om Aing Saraswatya Namaha. Om Shring Hring Aing 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 Maha Saraswatya Namaha. Om Aing Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Aing Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Aing Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Shring Hring Machandanataya Namaha. Om Shring Hring Machandanataya Namaha. Om Shring Hring Machandanataya Namaha. Om Lang Bang Rang Yang Hang Om. Om Lang Bang Rang Yang Hang Om. Inner and outer elements harmonized. Inner and outer pranas. Om Prana Prana Shuru Shuru Shodanaye Swaha. Om Prana Prana Shuru Shodanaye Swaha. Okay. Very good. Hope you enjoyed your chanting at home. And now you're in a good space to learn. Here we go. The last few points about what I would recommend a person should do to pick a teacher are these. Okay. First is to, this is number, I think number 13, if I'm on our list, if I'm not mistaken. I think we got up to number 11 before. Before. So I think it's good whenever possible, if not essential, for the one who you want to be able to take you past stage 7 to your own self-realization, that you pick a teacher who knows the secret oral tradition that goes along with their textual, more common textual, theoretical, basic practice tradition. What is this secret oral tradition, right? It means that the teacher doesn't rely on just textbooks or what's in the textbooks. Textbooks are fine in the spiritual tradition. You know, a lot of times when I talk about our tradition, I come off as sort of anti-textbook. I'm not anti-textbook. I'm not anti-anything, as long as it works. But when a person positions himself as a teacher and all they have is the written knowledge in the textbook, that's limiting. That's limiting in a way that is limiting in a bad way, because a textbook can't come alive for you without someone who's realized the practices and, you know, has have some state of realization. So textbooks are essential as kind of markers and trigger points that teachers will use to teach out of if they have the secret oral tradition. But without the textbook, we don't suffer one bit if we have the secret oral tradition. And this is the most important thing. Those scholars try to make a big deal out of textbooks and always say that, you know, the tradition rests on the textbooks and it's a verified proof of the tradition and so forth. The fact is, every textbook tradition was first an oral tradition. The Vedas were oral for, some people think, 3,000 or 4,000 years before they were first written down 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. Very old tradition. And all the tantras were originally received, the original deity tantras anyway, originally received as visions or dreams and so forth. And then that's obviously a direct transmission, and they were given out orally and then committed to writing as well. So the idea that writing was first is false. And I don't like when scholars try to put that out. So the truth, because it's not true, the main truth is that there's an oral tradition which is extremely important for us to be able to contact the essence of the practices, the essence of realization that a textbook just can't bring out. The closest books are the dohas or the songs of Mahasiddhas, you know, or inspired poetry of Mahasiddhas, which other people wrote down. Usually they didn't write them themselves, but sometimes they did. But that structure of a poem is much better at trying to bring you into the place of directly accessing what it is they're trying to point to with that poem. So it's important whenever possible to have pick a teacher who does know the secret oral tradition that goes along with the teachings, the standardized teachings that you often find in textbooks, so that they can be unlocked. And I'm telling you that it's a difference between, you know, making a cake with all the ingredients and only having some of the ingredients, mixing up flour, sugar, and an egg. You don't have the other stuff, and you stick it in the oven and nothing happens, or it comes out like a lump, a hard lump. You know, you need all the ingredients to access realization. And one of the most important ingredients is that the teacher should have the secret oral tradition that goes along with the tradition. So what do I mean by secret here? I mean that when they're teaching in public venues, they're writing something. Many teachers have written books about practice and so on, and many will teach in the public and so forth, but they're not going to give the deepest teachings that are going to unlock it all for everybody in those formats, in those medium, because it seemed to be not intimate enough. It turns it into a bit too much of a, well, we lose the value for it. And there's something very important about the in-person transmission value we want to maintain as well. It keeps it alive, because these secret pointing out instructions, though they're just a form of knowledge, they have to be given at the right time, in the right time in the person's progress and practice to trigger something deeper, right? I've seen this over and over again after over 3 decades of teaching. If you're giving this at the wrong time, this pith knowledge, the core knowledge, the secret oral teachings that go along with the basic structure of the system, people they don't have a place to place it. They don't have a way to contextualize it. And therefore, it doesn't really open them to the deeper reality that teaching, that practice, and that oral instruction is supposed to trigger them into. Okay? So just make sure they know it. And I wrote another note to myself here, make sure they're willing to teach it, because there are masters I've approached who definitely knew the secret oral tradition of their tradition, but they wouldn't go outside. They wouldn't go outside the playbook, the textbook. They wouldn't go outside. They wouldn't let you into the inner circle, right? And I talked to students that had been around them for 1 or 2 decades, and all of them had said, no, we're still waiting for that teaching, or we're still waiting for this teaching. And it was obvious they were very nice and dedicated, loyal, devotional students. I don't know what they were waiting so long for, because they were obviously very good practitioners and they were morally, ethically prepared. So some teachers just hold knowledge because it suits them. It suits them, I think, like carrot on the end of the stick. Honestly, to be honest, to be brutally honest about it, in the teacher game, we don't usually talk this stuff about each other, but I think a lot of people hold out information because this is how they make their living. This is how they appear to be the mystic, secretive teacher and so forth. They give away that last bit of knowledge and it's all gone. Pretty famous astrology teacher, Vedic astrology teacher, held out really the core information that he had used to be a really incredible reader of astrology for decades and decades and decades. And he had many, many, many loyal students who were with him for a really long time. And then in the very end, he's going to retire and he says, okay, now I'm going to give you the stuff that I used that really made me great and really, so powerful and blah, blah, blah. And all the students, like his little fan base, he's kind of like got a cult going, his little fan base around him. They're all so excited. Oh, that's so great. The master's going to give us what we've waited for 30, 40 years. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? A lot of these astrologers that he trained were very, very good, really good for 20 or 30 years. They could have had that information a long time ago, used it and helped a lot of people. It was pure, who knows what. I don't want to even guess the motive, but it wasn't right to keep it like that until the end. So make sure that the teacher who has a secret oral tradition is willing to give it, right? That would be important. Number 14, pick a teacher, not a mystic, a shaman, or a magician. Okay, let's make a distinction there. Pick a teacher, meaning someone who has it in their nadi, in their fate to teach, to really be a teacher, not just to teach because everybody does. There was this shift like in the 60s, 70s, even into the 80s in the United States, at least, where I was in the 60s, 70s. I was a 60s born child, 62, and got into yoga very young at 7. So it was still 69 by the time I was still into yoga, got into yoga. And, I was around the scene, whatever scene there was in the 70s and 80s, and there wasn't a scene. That's what I want to tell you, is there wasn't a scene. There were a few teachers, and you had to really search them out. And they were older. They were almost always gray-haired, long in the tooth, as we would say. And that's because people knew that teaching was a destiny. Teaching is a nadi. Teaching is not something that you go and do at courses everywhere. And the shift happened like when the hippies became the yuppies in the 80s, and that spawned even more greed and millennial consciousness after that and so forth. It all became about being the teacher. Like everybody thought that's how I get status. That's how I get street cred. You know, I have to be the teacher. So instead of yoga retreats, which used to be, wonderful in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s, there was a lot of yoga retreats going on. It shifted. I think it was around, I don't know, maybe 2005 or so, 2003 or two, something in there. It shifted big time. People didn't want to go to retreats anymore to practice yoga, to practice meditation retreats, go deeper. They dried up. If you ran a meditation retreat, 20 people came. I mean, that's a lot back then, maybe 5. Same thing now. When you run yoga retreats, same thing. But when you run certification retreats, where you can get a piece of paper that says, now I'm certified to teach this thing. You can run a weekend retreat for yoga, pack it full of 100 people, and they'll pay $1,000. You made $100,000 on a weekend. That's what people do. And this is what's happened. There was a big shift. So people forgot that it's a real naughty to be a teacher. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not something that people would really want if they really knew what spiritual teaching was about. I'm talking about spiritual teaching now. I used the yoga example. That, of course, used to be a spiritual tradition, which gurus taught. But now it's everybody can teach it because you did your 100 hours, 300 hours, whatever. So, okay, well, then it's an exercise form. That's fine. But when it comes to spiritual teachers, we want to make sure, I think we just lost connection. Okay. When it comes to spiritual teachers, we just want to really try to make sure that they have teacher karma, right? And for yourself, don't try to get with a teacher just to become a teacher, just to verify that you really are somebody or that you know something. This is a wrong motivation. And yet that's what's going on like crazy today. Everybody wants to be certified. Everybody wants to teach. I'm amazed at the change now, the number of emails and text messages I get, requests that say, I really want to come and study with you. And I really want to do that because I want to teach. And it's amazing because you never would have heard that in the old days. Never. Not yoga. They're saying they want to come and teach. They want to come and study with me because they want to teach, be a spiritual teacher, be a guru or something. Like, well, that's interesting. That's interesting. It's a change. So pick a teacher, not a mystic. What's a mystic? Let's distinguish between a mystic. A mystic is a person who's deeply connected to their base, deeply connected to the essence experience. But they don't necessarily stick to the standard pro forma of practice or a system of practice. They may very well be immersed in a system. They could be a Sufi, a Shaivist, a Christian mystic, whatever. Mystics are human, they're from all different traditions. But they're kind of sitting in the source, but they're not really karmically, fate-wise equipped or having the temperament, to teach, to lay it out step by step, to guide people through. They're sometimes too suffused with the mystical state to be useful in any capacity whatsoever. So they used to call them holy fools in Europe a long time ago. So this is a mystic. I would say don't bother trying to learn from a mystic. I knew many mystics and I hung around with them at times, but I never thought about taking them as my teacher or anything like that. And they might drop a pearl of wisdom now and then, but I certainly wouldn't wait around, sitting around for days and days with them while they're in their states of whatever kind of consciousness they're in mysticism, just so they can drop a little bomb on me once in a while. It's not teaching, and it's not effective. It won't get you anywhere. The next kind of teacher is, and I would put actually, like Neem Karoli Baba kind of fits into that place. He had a lot of cities, a lot of magic powers, very mystical person, no system to teach, no standardized system, no text, no secret oral transmission. He was just sitting in the state all the time of whatever he was in. He was experiencing it. That's what he was doing. And, people gathered around him and said he was their teacher and gave him initiation and stuff. He said, he gave me initiation, but he just basically said, call yourself Ram Dass, So he's a modern example of a really great practitioner, really wonderful person, realized person who is a mystic. I know I saw in a thread that some of you don't like him because you think he was very bad to his wives or something. No idea about that. Let's just keep it right now to the mystical aspect of him, okay? I'm not talking about anything about personalities in this discussion of this answer right here. I don't want to go into another volley of emails or text messages about how he picked his nose at red lights. It's not any of my concern. Excuse me. So, yeah, I don't know what he had going as far as relationships, but as an example of a mystic, he kind of fits the bill, and he helps to illustrate this, what we're talking about right now. Let's see, a shaman. First of all, I think we covered this already, but shamans are healers. Shamans are not spiritual teachers. And the vast majority of shamans I knew when I was training in shamanism and when I was still hanging around with them a little bit, even after I got into the Dharma, I would still go visit them and hang out with them. They were pretty messed up people on a personality level, on an emotional level, and addictions, and lots of addictions, pretty bad domestic situations. But again, shamans are like mystics, but they use their mystic states for healing. So they can be a very effective healer, but a very messed up person. And I think you see this analogy a lot in spiritual teaching. It can be a very messed up person and sometimes be an effective spiritual teacher. And I've seen, since we started this discourse, there's been a lot of people writing in on the threads, and it's been great. Everyone's been writing really great stuff. The negative stuff and the positive stuff. It's all good to get out there and talk about it. But there seemed to be a fair bit of stuff out there saying, this teacher seemed really great to me and I got a lot of good teachings, but then they were so bad in these other ways. I'm like, yeah, that happens too, for sure. So shamans, no. So shamans aren't teachers, okay? Aren't spiritual teachers. And I wouldn't pick one for a spiritual teacher. They're not necessarily teaching a spiritual system at all. They're just healers. The magician type, the magician, the siddha, the one who has a lot of siddhis, basically. Siddhis don't reflect on the quality of a person's mind, the quality of their connection to the base. Siddhis are called magic powers. In Sanskrit are called siddhis, like the ability to levitate or to hold your breath really long or move something telekinetically or to be psychic and so forth. Usually psychic siddhis is what people show quite easily. So one of the more easy ones to get. So magicians, I would call them magicians, they don't necessarily have any kind of spiritual development. You don't need very high spiritual development at all to be a magician, to have magic trick power. And I say magic trick power because it's not essential that you demonstrate these magic powers to be realized. The greatest siddhis, or magic powers as it's called in our tradition, the greatest siddhi of all is unconditional love. I think it's very important to stress that. The greatest siddhi is unconditional love. Now, to realize unconditional love takes a tremendous amount of training for people that are karmically obscured like us. So that's the fruit of our practice. That's where we're going in our depth of our practice and our path, is to become a really good human being and be able to automatically, spontaneously be abiding in and expressing unconditional love and unlimited wisdom, right? So I would forget about the ones who have the magic powers. There was this fella, Nityanand, recently, not the Baba Nityananda, who was very famous old Mahasiddha, but the recent one, Nityanand, who was charging like $10,000, I think, per month for his training, and he was accepting, how many was it? 1,000 students at a time at his big ashrams in India. And he was a fake, a charlatan, making millions of dollars on Silicon Valley. People from California were flocking there like crazy. One of my students that was really sweet, that was really hanging in there for a while, went and got lost in his cult, and I thought, what a shame. Because the guy was a complete fake, complete phony. He would do these tricks. I don't know if you've seen them on YouTube. They're all over YouTube. You can check it out. He would say he's giving initiation to like these young girls, and then all of a sudden, immediately they had like magic powers and siddhis. They were totally realized. And they would be doing psychic tricks. So they had little recorders in their ears. And it was demonstrated like many times how when the recorder kind of failed, she wasn't able to hear and there were problems, she couldn't do the magic trick. But people got fooled by this because it was, good stage magic, and they got fooled by it in mass. I mean, a lot of people got duped by this guy and duped out of their dough. And, there's two kind of magicians. The one that's for real has the siddhis but can't teach. Why would you bother? Because siddhis don't mean you're a teacher. And the other one, also doesn't mean you're connected to your base. You can have siddhis without any connection to your base, actually. Without any connection to realization, you can have siddhis. Just remember that. That's a fact. And people who usually display them are people who usually are not connected to their base. I've never met someone who's doing siddhis for real who is connected to their base. And then you have the fake magician. like this Nichinan guy who was ripping everybody off. He's just one. There's so many. So don't go for that either. Okay. All right. Next, number 15. Here's a big one. It is a big one for modern students, right? This was not a problem when I was growing up. When Mira taught earlier in the 60s, 70s, it was all about you get a teacher and you don't care about their personality. You just are there to be lucky that you have the karma to get to the teachings. You know, New York back then, when I was growing up, is not like it was now. Not like it is now. New York back then, you know, you had one yoga teacher, two yoga teachers, three maybe. There were not classes going on in studios, really. If they were, it was so obscure, no one knew what it was. It was very difficult. The Taoists were not teaching anything public. There was no Montauk Chia world yet. That all happened later in the 80s. So in the 60s and 70s, you know, it was really hard to find any kind of real teacher like this. So you took whatever you could get was the first thing. Second thing was a lot of these teachers from back then, I think, had gone through the ranks underneath the qualified teacher and gained their authority and had by transforming their character, having a high quality of mind, high quality of connection to the base. And, you know, they weren't running around trying to become a teacher. The teacher suggested you should teach as you're offering Guru Dakshina to pay me. They were usually kind of pretty good, you know. But nowadays, it's not the same anymore. And the students have changed as well. Students are expecting perfection, Christ-like perfection out of teachers, and they can't handle any kind of character flaw. Now, I'm not talking about abuse. So let's not get into that whole volley. I don't need all those posts and threads again. But I'm not talking about abuse at all. But students are too hypersensitive, right? I mentioned a comedy skit that Bill Burr does, and he was also just discussing with Joe Rogan on Joe Rogan's podcast that it was a rougher time. People were tougher back then. And it's true. People were tougher back then. We're very sensitive now. So nowadays, I think it would be important. I would give the advice that a student should probably find a teacher whose temperament and personality match their own in a good, confluent way. Rather than thinking, growing up in California, being real sensitive and having everything given to you on a silver platter and having some kind of, oh, I got a gold medal, but so did the other 30 kids in the race because we're all so good and perfect. That kind of mentality that we have in America today, or everybody's a winner, which is crazy. Okay, when you grow up with that kind of thing where everything is given to you and you have this culture of trying to create self-esteem in the children all the time and it ruins them with postmodernism and so on, you're super sensitive. I picked on California, but anywhere in the country, but California's kind of a hotbed. You're super sensitive. And because of that, dealing with a teacher who is kind of strict, old-fashioned, you probably will find that to you, they will seem rough, abrasive, possibly even mean when they just tell you to do something for a practice. Oh, so mean, So you got to be really, I think today you got to be careful picking because until you're very mature, until you're very filled with your own power and your self-authority, people can, We're stalled. We're not recording right now. Okay. So let me know when it starts up again if I start talking again. Let's see if this says it's recording still. So it probably is. I mean, it doesn't say it's recording. It's just that the time counter. It's still on, okay, because the timestamp is still going. Okay, so, all right. So students are more sensitive these days, and I think that has to be taken into consideration. It's not really a put down, it's the culture. It's how everybody grows up now. It's the way it is. So people are more sensitive. Okay, great. Then they shouldn't pick teachers that they think are harsh because that'll cause them to go off the rails every time the teacher interacts with them in a way that they feel is harsh. By the same token, there is an ancient understanding that there is a certain karmic fit with the teacher and student. It can go by bhava. It can be measured by astrology chart, confluence like we do with people that want to be married to each other. And it can give great insights into how we should be with our teachers if we understand it. Beyond the scope of this short talk right now, but let me mention about it. Maybe I can be coerced into giving a longer class on it or a series of classes in the future. But basically, in astrology, you're looking at pillars or four foundational relational aspects between yourself and someone else. And understanding the energy, the quality, the characteristics of that relation, of those four relational qualities between each other, energies between each other, you can pretty much predict how you'll feel, what you'll be able to receive, all that. But the relationship, you'll be able to predict accurately the fabric of the relationship, right? Okay. Now, if you know astrology and you know your teacher's astrology chart, you can check it out and see how it's going to feel and say, okay, so forewarned is forearmed. Well, we have an enemy type of relationship in the moons. That means his mind and my mind will butt heads. Okay, if I can put up with that, the sun looks really good for the sun. The soul's desire to spiritualize is the sun. Our spirit's desire to know its essence. Okay, I can probably deal with it. You might say to yourself, all right. But the mind, I'll know about it. Now, I'll be careful not to let myself get triggered with the mind that's different between he and I. That's kind of like enemies, that kind of thing. You could go that way if you wanted to. Another way, though, that is more recommended, because most gurus in the old days didn't tell anybody their astrology charts, maybe for that reason. Nowadays, everybody knows everybody's astrology information. It's no big secret. But a long time ago, it was kept secret, right? That was your secret information that kept you away from attacks. I think they thought some spirit attacks and things. But now let's talk about the bhavas. Bhava, B-H-A-V-A. There is a type of emotional, mental, attitudinal disposition that we call bhava. There were a number of bhavas that describe how teacher and student can fit together. So there are bhavas, and they describe every relationship that humans can have. There are bhavas such as, it may surprise you to find out that there are enemy bhava, where you can feel with a teacher that you just don't like them so much, but yet you don't like them so much, but you can't stop thinking about them. And this is what they would say about the core of devotion, is that whatever is on your mind all the time, that you dwell upon all the time, that's what you're going to become. So they'd say that even though you didn't like that teacher, if the teacher was an authentic teacher, I'm saying, you're dwelling on that teacher, you're going to become realized anyway, even though you didn't like them, right? There's a famous story about this with Krishna and a local king. So anyway, there's that bhava. Then there's the bhava of mother and child or father and child. So the child can be the guru. And you may have this innate relation with them where you feel like you want to father them or mother them. It's from past lives, etc. But it makes a fit. When the teacher allows you to play that role a little bit, not in a weird way, just to have that feeling, to have that energy. You'll see it in India. The teachers will let the students do that kind of thing. The mothers, Ma's, they call them, the female devotees of an authorized, authentic guru in India, will sometimes allow the women to chastise him or scold him or her, tell him to eat your veggies, whatever. Act like a mother, basically, sometimes, because they think it's a way of acting out their karma and reducing their karma by expressing it and getting it out and getting it moving. But what it does is make a nice fit, right? It allows a natural karma between them to come out. And here, the guru is not feeling bad about this either, because they have that fit with them. They recognize that fit on a personality level, that's what's going on. Yes, the guru-disciple game is supposed to be para personality, supra personality, above the personality. But we're saying in real non-dual tantra that kind of relating doesn't exist. Just case in point, how many complaints students make about teachers. I mean, if we were really dealing with essence to essence, there'd be zero complaints. So obviously, really, our psychology still does have a lot to do with how we take the spiritual path or not, at least for a long time, until we're way above stage 7. So that's another relation. And it can be swapped too. It can be where the guru is the mother or father to the student who's a child. It can be brother, sister, sister, brother, brother, brother. It can be lovers. It can be, because sometimes students end up marrying the teacher. Teacher ends up marrying the students. The first Vajrayana teacher I ever went to see in my life was Chagdud Tulku in Sydney, Australia, a long time ago. It was 1987, I think. And he was there with a young white woman sitting next to him up there teaching together. And I noticed, she seemed to be more than a translator, but yet very respectful. And I couldn't quite figure it out, because it seemed like there was something going on, but yet it seemed very respectful. And I started to learn about that whole world of consorts and gurus and all that. And so she was married to him, fully married to him. They had a long married life together. And now I think she teaches in Brazil, actually took over one of his monasteries in Brazil. So anyway, that was my first exposure to that, where that kind of alignment can present itself. And then there it is. It's just so obvious, you know. Sukalia and I have that kind of relationship. We have so many astrological configurations that show husband and wife. It's kind of crazy. So there are many different ways the bhava can play out. So long story short, pick a bhava that is comfortable for you, because we know that our psychology is still playing a large role in this guru-disciple game up until, you know, stage 6, probably. So until then, it might be good if you find someone who is authentically deep into the practices and has the realization, who's authentic as a teacher and knows the teachings, who has the secret oral transmission as well, is willing to give it, and then matches you personality-wise, you know, and all the other criteria I gave. Then it's probably going to go really well for you, be very smooth, right? And the last characteristic I had on this one is, on this topic is, yeah, pick a teacher who doesn't ask you to go beyond where you're at. Not too challenging. Too challenging is destabilizing, okay? So the last characteristic I would suggest is, some teachers, although all the other boxes are checked and they're really good, they're going to ask you, they're going to push you to go. And that teacher, you know, is useful for some type of people that have real Titanic kind of dispositions and pitta types that really want to go. But for others, it'll be too much. It'll be too overbearing. It'll be too painful. It'll feel mean. You know, it's really common. So I coached MMA and wrestling and martial arts pretty much my whole life. And now with coronavirus, nobody's wrestling. And I noticed this in coaching. You'd get somebody in, they will come in to study your sport, you know, train in your sport and so on, or your martial art, and they're just not going to do well. You know, they need to go find a softy, sweet Aikido teacher somewhere who's going to let them roll around and be really happy and soft for a really long time. Because when you're getting into certain sports, the coach has to push you past your limitations. And if you don't like that, you're not going to flourish. And the coach is not going to see you getting results, and that's going to create a friction, right? So the same thing with spiritual teachers. You have to find what kind of teacher, what's their teaching style? Are they the kind that push you really hard and chastise you a little bit or tease you when you're not pushing hard, you know, and you like that because you were a sport player, you were whatever, you liked it, you like that hard training, okay, then it's good for you. But if it's not good for you, don't get with it, because it'd be really, really difficult. So in this way, we're only really ready for teachings and practices when we're ready. We decide by working very hard on our current practice, and that opens us up into a ripeness to have the opportunity to receive transmission of the next level of practice. But that's our own thing. That's our own pace. We choose it. We decide it. No teacher can make us go faster or slower if we don't want to. And they shouldn't, and we shouldn't try to do that. Because one of the 3 hallmarks of authentic tantric practice is to work exactly where you're at. Work exactly where you're at. Because to do anything else is kind of to step out of reality, isn't it? It's to step out of present moment awareness. It's to shoot way beyond. And I think people do this, especially in tantric yoga, because they hear about all the magic of transmission. And the teachers suggest a practice that seems dangerous to them, seems scary to them, but they push themselves through it. They go, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this because this could be the breakthrough that gets me beyond my mind. And I'm then going to be realized like the Guruji. And even though it's painful and embarrassing or shameful, I'm going to do it. You know, this is a bad idea. Very bad idea. I suggest no. If you want to confront your own mind and push yourself past where you thought you could do because you feel like having that next challenge, right? Obviously, let's do an analogy to exercise. Even if you're exercising softly and slowly and you want to make progress this way, maybe it takes you 10 years to get progress that somebody else who goes faster does in 1 year and challenges himself harder, in a harder way. But you still made the progress. In that 10-year progression, you're still going to have to challenge yourself. It's just going to be just a little bit less than it would be someone who's going crazy with challenge. I gave an example of how I used to do squatting and exercise in Olympic weightlifting a long time ago when I was a kid. And that was to go up in weight 3 times in a row and then go back 2 or go back 1 and then do the same thing, up in weight, the same thing, half pound, and drop back, half pound. And that way you felt like you were always going steadily up. The weights just kept going up week by week by week by week and never had a plateau. And you thought, wow, that's amazing. But there was still a soft challenge, these little weights we had, 1/4 pound weights on each side. This massive bar loaded with hundreds and hundreds of pounds of weight. And then you had these little 1/4 pound weights that would go on. And it was kind of cute. It cracked me up at the time. I remember laughing about it a few times, like, it's amazing this works. But you are challenging yourself. You're challenging yourself where you're at. You're challenging yourself with what you can handle. And I think that's an extremely important principle, okay? If you challenge too hard, too fast, you're going to destabilize, okay? And this bears in mind like one quick teaching, okay? The milk, meat, and marrow teaching from Tantra is an oral tradition teaching that's very good to understand. When we're little babies and we start out on the path, we're babies. Just like babies, they will drink the milk from the mother's breast and they will just immediately throw it back up all over us. Every mother or father has been thrown up on multiple times, amongst other things. So you know what I mean, right, parents? So when we're babies on a spiritual path, our teacher, like our mother, just gives us freely the mother's milk. The child doesn't do anything to deserve it. We don't do anything to deserve it. We didn't really even work hard enough to deserve it yet. But the teacher is unconditionally loving. That's their job. That's who they are. That's their essence. And they give. And then we throw it up. In other words, we rebel or we create conflict or we throw a hissy fit or we mess up our lives in some way, which throws us off the path and we wasted all that time and energy of that old nice teacher, that kind of thing. But that's normal, right? That's normal. Teacher doesn't hold it against you. That's what we call the milk stage of teaching. So when you're a baby, get a milk teacher. Milk teachers are nice. Milk teachers turn the other cheek, let you slap that one, let you slap this one. They're always sweet, always smiling, always compassionate. They may not be giving you very deep teachings yet. It's only milk teaching, of course. But they're always the ones that are so sweet. You hear reports that, oh, that teacher's so kind, so sweet. You never hear a bad word out of them. You never hear anything harsh. She's so sweet, That's a milk teacher, right? And they get huge followings, massive internet followings or in-person followings because they never challenged the student, never challenged them. But then if you're saying that long enough as a student, you start to realize I'm kind of turning to yogurt. I'm going sour here because I'm not growing enough. Something in you will want more. And then you'll turn to what we call the meat level. You'll want meat. So the baby goes from wanting milk to wanting meat. And you see this with little babies. You'll see them when they're getting off the breast. You have them on the dinner table. I used to put them right up on the dinner table with my kids and let them see what they go for on the trays of veggies and carbs and meat. Man, they go right for the meat. They don't go for the veggies. They don't go for the carbs. It's very rare. They go right for the meat. So it's kind of a true teaching as well. So when we're done with milk, we want to go for meat. It's harder to digest meat, right? It's chewy, it's stronger, blah, blah, blah. All this idea means that we're ready for deeper, stronger teachings, and the teacher can deliver them in a stronger fashion. Eventually, we practice long enough and we get rid of all care about the personality of the teacher. We know they're authentic. We know they're non-abusive. Yes, 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 that's all given. But now we don't care about any mismatches between the authentic teacher and the authentic disciple. There's no more care about mismatch. No more care about, well, our moons are 6-8 and our ascendants are 4-10, astrology terminology, right? And we're kind of inimical to each other in one way, contrasting in another way. It could be difficult. Who cares? No one cares. At this point, you're like, transmission. You just get the teaching. This is called the marrow. So you've gone through the meat. You got down to bone. You crack the bone open and you're sucking the marrow right out of the bone now. You're into the deepest level of the teachings, the deepest layer. You've proven yourself to be stable mentally, emotionally, and ready for it. And you've shown that through all the years of work you've done in the other stages of the work and established good foundation. Okay. This is, again, to say that, to work where you're at. So I'm a milk student. Okay, I'll find a milk teacher. That's good. I'm a meat student. I want a meat teacher. Otherwise, you won't be satisfied. Same thing with marrow. Okay. Now, that ends the formal teaching on this subject of how to pick a teacher. And I gave 13, is it 13? 15, 16 types of advice. There you go. So in the future, when anybody wants to know how do I pick a teacher, because I'm getting so many requests for will you be my teacher and how do I pick a teacher, it's going to send them right to this beautiful set of classes we did on the YouTube channel, and maybe we'll have them up on our website. We'll see. I don't know how that will work, and make an ebook. Okay, now we have 2 questions we'd like to handle before we go off and start another class a half hour after we end this one. Yes.
Someone has 2 questions. A follow-up about the bhavas. Isn't there also the bhava of friendship between guru and student? It seems to be the best match for me.
Absolutely, Faisal, I think. Absolutely, Faisal. I didn't list them all because I thought it's too much to go into right now. Like I said, maybe I'll go into a more detailed class on that sometime because that's great. The bhava of friend, excuse me, the bhava of friend, Maitra Bhavana, is definitely one of the classic bhavanas, and it's a really great one. You know, if the student is mature, meaning they're still able to, here's a difficult one about the husband-wife bhava, the lover bhava, and the friend bhava. Here's the difficult thing about that. The student has to be very mature because they have to be able to balance in their own mind the idea that they're still trying to always remain in a sense of present moment awareness that this is my teacher. And then I'm receiving a certain type of shakti, non-verbally, just through their vibration because of the quality and nature of their mind and connection to their essence, verbally because of teachings they're giving, non-verbally in the way they conduct themselves, you know, all these different ways of teaching. So if I can, as a mature student, remain in that kind of awareness while still being friendly with the teacher, you know, having a beer, watching the football game or watching a fight. I used to have students could come into my living room when I lived in Thailand in the center and we watched UFC, MMA fights, you know, and have fun like that together. But it's difficult for many students to maintain that until they're very, very advanced, I'd say. Intermediate students still fall from that. In the husband-wife situation or in the lover situation, it's very difficult in that one, especially even more difficult not to project your stuff onto the teacher who is now your partner. You know, do you tell your husband or wife who's the teacher, take out the garbage, it's your job, you didn't take out the garbage today, you know, or do you think, well, I should be really devotional, they had a hard day teaching a lot of people, I should really do it, but I'm exhausted too, you know? So this becomes a very, very difficult area for people and makes those relationships difficult. I forget what they call it in psychology. What's it called, honey, when you have dual relationships, I think. Dual relationships. So yes, Faisal, the friend, the bhava, the Maitra Bhavana relationship of teacher to student is really great when a student is very mature and can pull it off. If that's their natural bhava, you said it seems natural for you. So that would be the natural bhava. I wouldn't try to create it if it wasn't my natural bhava, right? But certainly I think friendliness is a wonderful quality to have in any teacher, right? We'd love to have that sense of that they're friendly. They are friendly, right? Regardless of what your relation to them is on one of the bhavanas. There was a second part to this question?
The second question is, wouldn't you say that Dzogchen secret teaching is supposed to be given only to students who are ripe and ready to receive them? Instead, they are given online publicly.
Wouldn't you say?
Aren't the Dzogchen secret teachings supposed to be given only to students who are ripe and ready to receive them, and yet they're being given online publicly?
What's a comment about that? Yeah. So again, Faisal, yes, this is a little bit off topic about how to pick a teacher, but let's spin it into that. Yeah. What other teachers do with their secret teachings, if they get a message from their master in their mind who's dead already and said, you should teach this, I don't know. Maybe that's why they're doing that. But I have a pretty strong opinion that secret teaching should remain so, and they shouldn't be taught publicly, especially on the internet, and books and things. So yeah, I'm of that mind, but I can't put down an authentic lineage holding teacher or someone who's done their work and is authorized as a teacher for doing that. If they think that's what should be done, that's their life, you know. But I don't think so personally, because of all the reasons I said before. Secret teaching should come at the right time. Dzogchen has many secret teachings, and I see a lot of the Dzogchen groups online, and there's a lot of really kind of crazy people out there who've received secret teachings. Actually, I can see some of the secret teachings they're discussing, which you shouldn't receive outside of a one-to-one relationship where the teacher knows you well and has put you in retreat and all that kind of thing. Because I think these secret teachings, let me rephrase that. I know that these secret teachings, when they're received by people who are below stage 7, these secret teachings cause mental, emotional imbalance, God realm fixations, or possession by minor gods. I've seen it all too often, right? It's not good at all. They don't have the recognition of their true nature, so they can't receive these teachings and put them into practice in the right way. It destabilizes their minds. They grab onto them as concepts. And so, yeah, I'm not a fan of that. That's not something I would suggest. And I wouldn't really want to go with a teacher who did that either, because then I personally would wonder about their ability to, what is their discrimination wisdom? What is their discriminatory wisdom, right? But that's just me personally. I don't want to make a judgment on anybody. Okay. That's it. Okay. Well, great. So let's chant Shantipat mantras and close this session. Feel free to do mudras at home. Now, whatever you've received through your body, speech, and mind during this class, and how your consciousness has been elevated, your vibration has been elevated, and you feel a little bit better and deeper into your path and your essence, offer that good feeling out now to all beings, because this really works. Offering merit really does work. On a physics level, you can prove it with electromagnetic understanding as well from the heart pulse, okay? So really offer out with a prayer of love and compassion to all beings who are still suffering, the benefit of what you learned today as well. You get it too. You don't lose it by offering it. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritam gamaya sarvesham svastir bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Om Trambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Varadhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyamamrita Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Hari Om Tat Sat. May all the benefit be sent out and felt in our own being. May it be so. Blessings and long life to our gurus, our lamas, our dasha, our wisdom masters from all the great non-dual yoga and meditation traditions. May our lineage masters continue to bless us and protect us and guide us on the path of full fruition. And may every thought of every experience of thought, feeling, action be offered up for the benefit of all beings. May we strive for that. May we know the full fruit of this path as unconditional love and limitless wisdom. May it be so. Tatastu Shivoham. You are that. Goodbye. And how does it